Enel is going to be a problem. I'm Mary TCG and I suck at YouTube intros, so let's just go over the deck. Recently, I've been playing a lot of Enel on the sim. I finished 7th place as of today, about 1.4 billion berry bounty, and it is August 7th today. Not sure when this video is going to be out, but I went 32-4 with the deck on my way there. So I just want to talk about a lot of the tech cards and what I played and just general matchups and what I think about the deck at the moment. If you want some of the deck lists I played, it'll be on screen right now, if that's what you're here for. But I will talk a lot about just different tech cards, different additions, how the meta shifts and what tech cards you should play, different matchups, what the key cards to watch out for is. So we'll start with the 2Ks. We're playing Flampe, Zeus, Veggie, and Extric. So I've seen a lot of people not play Flampe anymore, and that I really disagree with. I think Flampe is one of the better 2Ks in this deck still. Even though Zeus is another card that can take your own life, I believe that you do just need the life manipulation in this deck. Bedge is Bedge, we don't really need to talk about it at all, this card. But to be honest, if I do want to up the number of Flampe, so maybe if I cut anything, it will be a Bedge. But Zeus, obviously amazing. It gives you more outs to things like Cavendish and Green. It gives you out to like 4-cost Luffy and really 4-cost Cavendish in the Kuzan deck. And it lets you kill Zoro on 4 Dawn as well, in case you don't have anything else. Obviously, this deck, I'm not gonna lie, this deck's not great into UP Luffy, which hopefully the balance will just take care of it. If UP Luffy either loses Big Mom or Giant, this deck will have a 50-50 against that deck. Anyway, Extric. So why do we play Extric? This card originally was played in this deck to remove things like 4-cost Burgess in black, Teach specifically. But now I believe this card is mandatory because people are still playing Teach, and more importantly, this card can rest cards like the 3-cost Sanji from OP12. I will have it on screen, hopefully. But yeah, that's another like Burgess-esque card that this deck just cannot remove. Burgess is less of a problem now than it was before, from a new card in OP11, which I will show in the next section. But yeah, so that's it for the 2Ks. Flampe, very good. When they starve you on 10-cost Enel, amazing to have. Flampe Yamato is still an insane good combo. Lets you cycle with your 10-drop on field. Yeah. Next part, we're going to talk about the mid-game options, which is Kuzan, Gadatsu, and this new Sabo. This new Sabo out of OP12. Obviously, we don't have OP12 cards yet. They're not out, so some of the cards are just going to be proxies. So what does this card do? It draws 2 to trash 1 with the cost of taking your life. So essentially, you're drawing 3 cards to trash 1. More importantly, this card does have +3 costs, so this cannot get Usohachi'd and it cannot be Carib blocker arrested. But you will still get hit by things like the 5-cost Tashigi in green, as it is original cost. And Zoro cannot swing into this cost because the leader says 7 cost or more you can swing into, but it's original cost of 7 or more. Kuzan. This is one of the most broken cards for this deck ever printed. It removes 3 cost, and they ditch a card. In the whole Starve playstyle, it does everything you want it to do, right? It can remove things like 2-cost Veggie in yellow, it can remove 2-cost Shirahoshi in yellow, 2-cost Kyoshiro in green, 3-cost Tashigi in green, and 1-cost Rosinante in blue. And it ditches them a card, so you're starving them even more. This card is insane, and it sets up for your Gadatsu and Yamatos and another event tech card we'll see later on. But yeah, mid-game units. Let's talk about high end. Say high end. I am counting Kuma as a high end. That's just something you can heal. My high end are things that can heal. This card, so what does it do? 6 cost 7k power, 1k counter. On play, discard a card, heal 1, gain +2 cost until the start of your next turn. And on KO, it just healed 1 as well. So why is this good? This is specifically good against UP Luffy when you are going first on your 7th turn, because they cannot 9-mom this away next turn. If you play this on 6 going second, they can't 9-mom this away next turn anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So you can play this on 8 if you don't have like a category going second. Also, this is not something people usually want to swing at. This card, although it is very good, you do have to discard a card, so it doesn't go +1 like a lot of the other heal cards in your deck. I'm not like the biggest fan of it, because on the turn you play this, it's usually a turn where you have to play like a removal spell or removal minions, units, whatever you want to call it. But we'll talk a little more about that later. 8 cost category. This card, this is the best LO card ever printed. It's always been so. It's never changing. This card, best card in the deck, right? And second best card, 9 cost Yamato. Any starve deck, you know, these two are just MVP if you're looking to starve your opponent of resources. Which this is what the Enel deck's going to do. I think you have a very good matchup against a lot of the decks. And for your 10 drops, a lot of people are not actually playing this ace, which I don't really understand, to be honest. The one thing I have found in this deck is that sometimes you're lacking resources because, you know, you're using these as discards. People have just gotten better at playing against Enel in general. This is really good on 10 when you're low on cards compared to 10 cost Enel. Obviously, this is like a really powerful card. Another thing is when you play against blue, if I have both of these, if I have the time, I will always play this first to like see if they want to red rocket to remove it, and then when I play my Enel, it'll stick. The only matchup that this card is super important in is UP Luffy, because you don't care about swinging at their life, right? You want to be killing them, you know, you want to be swinging compared to another matchup. Like, let's say I'm playing against Zoro. They will just leave everything on their board active, and this will just have to swing at their life if you want to heal. So this card's not the best, you know. There are matchups, obviously. This is just like an insta win, but it's not good enough to play for, in my opinion. Good players will just play around it. If you're going to target like some of the worst players at your locals, or like whatever regional you're planning to go to in OP12, I would play 4. But for the sake of building this deck as competitively as you could, 3 is enough. And the events. The events are kind of what makes this set good. I'm not going to talk about the 0 cost. Obviously, I've seen a lot of people cut this. Don't cut this card. I've had like, I think 4 people. Like, I've seen 4 lists of people cutting this. I understand why you don't want to play 4 of it, just to try to fit other cards. But the thing with the 0 cost is that a lot of people's argument is that you don't trigger out of life. But that's not what this card is in this deck for. The reason you play this card is because there are a lot of bricks in this deck, and sometimes you do just die. A lot of times that you want to go down to 0, and like if your opponent has like a 3k body on the field and 10 down up, if they jam 13, they lose a lot of tempo, and you need cards like this to like in hand to try to counter out of that like 13k swing. And you sometimes just need your opponent to go for it, even though you are losing a lot of cards. They're losing all 10 of their dawn, so it's a big tempo loss for them. So I still think this card is absolutely necessary. This is a returning card. I don't know why I don't have copies of this, so it's samples for now. But Hino Bird Zap. So what does this card do? This is Gadatsu's effect on an event. And why is this good? Well, I'm going to talk about like a scenario later on. But for now, this is just more removal options. It's a cheap event to remove something like green Tashigi. You know, things that say your effects cannot be removed. So a very strong play is like Hino Bird Zap plus E-cost category to remove something. And an event. out of OP11. Merman Combat Ultramarine. What does this card do? This puts a 6 cost in life. It's a 6 for 6 Dawn. At first glance, this reads really bad, right? But this is 6 extra copies of Katakuri in your deck. And this is just a very strong mid-game removal option. Unless it is against an aggro deck, in which case you would rather play something like Gadatsu on 6 Dawn. This is just very strong against those like mid-rangey mid-game decks. You just stick it in the life. Also, the trigger is great, right? The trigger just puts a 4 cost in the life. It's like the Rocket Luffy trigger from OP7, I think that card is. Just on an event. But it gets around KO protection, which is fantastic. Now, if you've been following and counting, that's 49 cards. And what is the 50th card? So what is this? It rests one of your Enel cards and rests this to kill all 1 cost units. This was shown to me by a couple players in the Enel Discord. Honestly, I have tried this. I've tried it on ladder. I've tried it on locals as well. This card doesn't feel amazing to me. It feels very much like a win more card. You know, obviously, if you draw this against Silver 3, the game just ends, right? Like, there's nothing really you can do against this deck. I think the main targets for it was like 2 cost Beji, 2 cost Kyoshiro, which is valid. You know, a lot of the guys are playing 3. I think this card is very situational, and my stance on situational cards is that you always play 1 at most. But yeah, I don't see myself keeping this in the deck for a very long time, depending on how the meta shakes up. This is obviously very good at killing chump blockers. If we're in a meta that we're playing a lot of chump blockers, you know, like 2 cost Rosinante, 1 cost Law, and something like Nami, obviously this card is phenomenal. You should play like a lot more copies of it. But for now, I think 1 is enough as a tech card against some of the easier matchups, I want to say. I think Green Zoro and Red Rayleigh are both pretty easy matchups. But one thing I will say, this really helps against the Green Bonnie matchup. So yeah, I have since cut it to 1. I did try it. So if you're one of the 4 people that told me to try this card, I have tried it. It is good, but I think it's just too much of a win more card. Let's talk about some of the tech cards you can play in this deck that I've played, but I have since cut. Let's start with the removal. Egghead Luffy. This card is another card that I think it's very much win more. Depending on how the meta shapes up, I think you could play this. If it were in like a aggro, Doflamingo, Bello Betty kind of meta, you can play this. But well, obviously we're building this deck without UP in mind. I think this deck could be okay. I think we're going into like a more mid-rangey kind of meta rather than an aggro one. So this card could see play. I just personally prefer Gadatsu since the body gets to stick on board. Same thing with 5 cost Nami, you know, phenomenal trigger. But again, one of the problems with this deck is that you lose your hand really fast nowadays. So don't really want to lose more cards than you have to. Also, the Ultramarine is a lot of times just better than this Nami. And Red Hawk. Red Hawk is Red Hawk. You know, this card beats GP Luffy. But I think GP Luffy is a very good matchup for this deck. So we don't play it. Two more high-endish cards for the UP Luffy and just purple matchups in general. One is Charlotte Compo. I've always been a big fan of this card. A lot of people don't like it. Yeah, having a 7/9 on field is kind of like the same reason why Law and Kid are really good against things like UP Luffy. Is that if you play this on 7, it means that like it applies so much pressure, right? Every time this swings, they need to use a Gum Gum Giant, and eventually when they run out of Gum Gum Giants, especially against this deck, because they will run out of Gum Gum Giants, it's when you win the game. You can either like clear their board, or you can just kill them. And 8 cost Kid, you know, these 2 cards are what's good against UP. If UP is still like a very much irrelevant deck, especially if they don't have access to 9 anymore, these 2 cards will definitely get played in the deck. These are very strong against a 9-mumless UP. Now, let's talk about a blocker package in these three. This has always been in the deck back when I played it, because this card was great. This is what people were kind of playing when Raigo got banned, and this is when I kind of dropped the deck. These two. I think the Sanji, it has its place, but I think the Sanji is just the worst 5-cost Sabo. I would just play 5-cost Sabo over this any day of the week. Like, obviously this does have its uses when you want to, like, on 10 down you want to clear something and play a blocker that can draw 2. But situations like that, it just doesn't come up long enough. This is a trigger, obviously, you know. People were playing this back in OP3, and yeah, this is, if this is Shanks meta, right? If Shanks and Teach came back in the meta, I would say these two cards are good. But for now, we don't play these because there's just no room, and it's just not good enough. And this Kami is really good. This card is a tech for Nami, right? It also kind of works with like Gum Giants and stuff. But yeah, there's just no room. This card is great. It's really good against blue purple Sanji. That deck is very hard to starve as well. Now, we'll talk about some of the more techie cards that existed before and my thoughts on them. Out of these, I think the most playable two are these. Obviously this is just insane against Blackbeard, and this is to basically kill 5-cost Kuzan, right? You're never going to trigger this in this deck anymore. So, but Wire is interesting. Because we never got Raigo in our OP10 format, we never got to play, like, is it OP10? No, sorry, our EBE. It is OP10, right? Yeah, OP10 format, where we were playing this Mama, Chandelier, and X-Ray, and just going, wrestling everything and going full starve. And this, importantly, can rest 3-cost Sanji in that deck, because that deck is very problematic. It can help against the Buggy matchup. Buggy is a bit of a death sentence for Enel, in my opinion. So this is another card you can keep in mind. And this is this basically does the same thing as Wire, but it draws you a card. But I think Wire is better in this scenario, because against the better players, they will not rest their board for you to swing their Lucy into them. You know, you swing your Lucy, it'll be at life, they have to take a life. So, well, yeah. That's all the tech cards. Let's go over some matchups. So, let's talk about Green Zoro. This is probably the most popular deck that's coming out in OP12. And a lot of times on 10 Dawn, what they can do is play a Mihawk, restand their Dawn, play a Cavendish, restand their Dawn, and then play out a Kyoshiro. Now, why am I not the biggest fan of playing Stage? And this is one of the matchups that people advocate to play Stage for, right? So the idea would be you can Stage to kill this, Bird to kill this, and Katakuri this, right? And this answers everything and sets them behind the whole turn. Because this Kyoshiro can easily be the 3-cost Tashigi, and it has happened to me a lot of times. So if you don't have the Stage, what ends up happening is that you don't even need to Zapper this, because this only protects from KO, right? And you can just Katakuri this, right? And if you want, you can Zapper it, right? Which, in my opinion, doesn't really matter. But let's say we kill these two, right? With these, he's left with a Cavendish. Next turn, the Cavendish is going to swing, because this is the turn where they're going to want to kill you because they have the Dawn advantage of Cavendish, right? And what does this do? Because this is now rested, we can develop our 10-cost Enel, because we don't have to swing in the life, and we can just swing into the Cavendish. And I think that's developing this is very important. If you have like other units up, they'll just swing. If you rest them, Zoro will just swing twice into them, and at that point you just have to let it die, right? You lose way too much cards defending this. If they go 15 into this twice, I'm like, there's no way I'm defending it. However, if they do that, they essentially lose a turn, right? They've negged themselves the Cavendish, the Kyoshiro, and of course the Mihawk. And all I basically traded for it is that I got to keep this body on field, and they probably lost whatever cards they went to go for game with, right, with the 3-cost stage. And I basically won out on one body and the turn. So next turn I can play something like the 10-cost ace to just heal 1 if their board is empty because they spawn 15-15, right? And now I've gained 2 bodies, and there again, setback, they're essentially 2 turns behind now. Blue Kuzan. I think this is very much a sleeper deck in OP12, and I'll go over what to do against this deck. I think this deck is actually quite hard for Enel, just in general. But there are some intricacies. You don't always have to remove this Cavendish. And why is that? Because Cavendish is one of the win conditions against Blue Kuzan as Enel is deck out. And I think you can absolutely deck out Kuzan pretty easily, in fact, if they keep swinging with this. I don't mind giving them card advantage because at the end of the day, you know, I can't pudding them, or I can never really kill them anyway, unless their board is completely empty. So this is kind of their high ends, right? One of the things that could come up is that if they have something like this Kuzan on field along with this Sengoku, and they have 5 cards in hand, right? And let's say you're on 10 down. What you can do is that you can Kuzan to remove this, right? And now this only has the +1 cost when they have 5 or more cards in hand. So then you can Ultramarine this. This is something that's very niche, but it does come up. You know, you need to remember that the +1 cost doesn't always apply. And these are the 2 kind of big guys that you need to be wary about. So when to remove which one, right? This is one of the big questions. Usually, I will always remove the guard first. Even though this gives a Dawn and technically draws a card every turn, I don't see the reason to remove this. Again, one of your win conditions is deck out. If they're on like 4 or 5 cards in hand, I'm going to go ahead and remove the Sakazuki, right, to give them less cycle. But they're going to draw, their deck draws so much that 1 doesn't really matter, in the sense of like, oh, you don't want them to draw into Red Rock or Pudding. I will always remove the guard, right? They're getting themselves closer to deck out. And when you play out your high ends, which is why you want to play out like your Katakuris and Yamatos first, right? If they want to swing with their boards, right? If they don't have guard, the best thing they can do is Red Rock a body. And this deck typically only plays 2 Red Rocks. So once I see 1 away, I will play Enel, right? The turn after Red Rock is played is the best time to play an Enel or a Ace. I don't know where the Ace is on my table, but that's just another intricacy. Also, Kuzan cannot remove this with Gravity Blade, and it's something I forget all the time when I'm playing in person. But yeah, this is 8 cost. This cannot be removed, and Kuma is also 8 cost, only on the turn that is played. But Kuma is not amazing into this matchup just because of Gravity Blade. So that is all for today. Hopefully you find this video useful, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter over here somewhere on the screen. And yeah, any questions, hit me up in the comments, Twitter, anywhere, Discord. But yeah, see you next time.